Living my bucolic life, free every city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses in to the barn, then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses, the view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello everybody, welcome back. So I finally got the fabric I was waiting for, and this week I am going to be doing a folkwear pattern. If you've never seen, these are folkwear patterns. They are fun. They're just fun. And what I'm doing is the Bolivian Milkmaid. So there are different options, and we have a little waist length, a non-flared peplum, and a very wide flared peplum. I'm actually going to do this one. And they also have options of lined or unlined. I am doing unlined. This will be my first time with this. If this goes well and I want to do a more formal version at some point, then I'll do the lined one with a peplum then. But for right now, no. There is also a good deal of embroidery type embellishment stuff that's going to be happening, so that's going to be fun. So the fabric I'm using, traditionally these were made out of velvet, okay? Now I am using a velvet, but basically it's a curtain, okay? When I was looking for a velvet, I could only find stretch velvet or extremely expensive real velvet, and I didn't want either, okay? So what this is, it is a curtain, and it's sturdy, it's not stretching, but it's very, very soft, okay? So this just came in the mail. I think it was made in India, but I got it off Walmart.com fairly inexpensively. I am gonna run it through the washer before I start working on this, but the back side, you can see it's kind of like a knit, okay? So it shouldn't fray. I'm hoping that it's gonna be very user-friendly. So that's going to be it. When I ordered this, the color said pink. This is not pink. This is more, it's like dusty rose, maybe even a little more tan than dusty rose. But, it's still pretty, and I like it. So let me go ahead and get that washed. Now, on folkwear patterns, a lot of times they really highly encourage you not to cut their tissue paper, but to trace it onto another piece and then cut that out. I am a rebel, so I will be cutting out my tissue paper. It is what it is. It's my pattern. I can do with it what I want, but if you feel like that is too scary and you want to trace yours, by all means, trace it out. On the back of the pattern, well, first of all, in the pattern itself, they'll give you the whole history of this and everything like that, which is really fun. But on the back, they have a sizing chart. All right, and if I look at this, my measurements match up pretty exactly for size 18. All right, and so that is what I am going to be doing. The only thing I might do is lower the waist just a little bit because everything else is lower on me, so having it just slightly lower I think will work nicely for me. But it has very full sleeves and everything like that. So with that, there are the fabrics. This is the widths of fabrics and the views and everything here. Because I bought a curtain and not a standard piece of fabric, I believe it's going to be fine, but it's not like I bought 2.5 yards. I bought a curtain, so we can make that work. So anyhow, let me go ahead, throw this in the washing machine so that it can be, getting all of its little travel kinks out. Plus, I'll be able to see how this reacts to the washer. I want to make this so it's going to be a cute jacket that I can actually wear, you know? And so with that, I'm going to need to eventually clean it. So I really want to see how this fabric does with that. So let me get that in the washer, and I'm going to start opening up my tissue paper and see what the pattern looks like. Okay, so I have my velvet in the washer, and I do have some unbleached muslin here. It's fairly thin, just, you know, the regular cheap little unbleached muslin, because I am reading the Bolivian jacket lore and authentic detailing. And what they're saying is if you plan on doing the embellishment, and they're mentioning here that the authentic old ones would use like a soutache type embellishment with crystal beads. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to be doing it, if I'm going to be doing something like that or just embroidery. Not sure yet. You can see little designs on the pattern already, which is fun. But it says that if you're going to be doing that, you need to underline your velvet. So that's what I'm going to do. So it's not going to be like a lining where it's like a separate lining piece. It's where you combine the two fabrics so they act as a single unit and give it more strength. So that's what this is going to be. I've already pre-washed and dried this, so it's already got all the shrinking out of it that it's going to have, hopefully. So I just skipped ahead because it said if you're going to do finger braiding, skip to handwork instructions A. And I don't have soutache braids, so I was intrigued. They're basically having you braid cotton. So I went through my stash really quickly, and I've been saving this for tatting, but I am not going to be tatting, although I do have some really cute little tatting shuttles. We will do that some other day, just not today, okay? But I'm going to try to use this, if I can get it untangled, and do the, ooh, look, I found the end, and do the finger braiding. You know what? This is a whole bunch of short pieces. That's not going to work. Okay, I'm going to need to go ahead and find another thing, but I'll show you on this pink. Basically, I'm doing this now because I'm thinking as I have time, you know, in between different things, I'm just going to keep making more braid because this is going to require a whole lot. Okay, so it looks like this wants to come off in a 2-strand piece, and I'm going to let that. So kind of like crochet. If I can get this started, I probably should have started with a bigger tail down there. Okay, so I have a little slip knot, okay, with my 2 pieces of cotton, and I am just going to keep pulling that in. So anyhow, just kind of like that. Just slipping through over and over and over to make this into a braid. And I'm going to see, I think I have some light green of this too, all right? And so that's going to make a little braid that is going to be wide enough that I can use it as like a little soutache type piece. That's my thought right now. We'll see how it goes, but I just thought I would point that out to you because whenever I have some time to kill, I'm just going to keep making more and more braid as I go. And for the lengths of the braid, it has this little chart here, okay? Because inside, they're going to give you all of these different options of different designs to put in different places, okay? And they're going to tell you how much braid you need for each one of these. So I'm going to need to decide pretty early on what design I'm going to be putting where, so that I can be working on getting my braid to the appropriate lengths for each one. And it looks like, I mean, down here there's sleeve pleats. It needs 280 inches. Can you even see that? I don't even know if I'm focusing. 280 inches, that's a lot of inches. So, and they are recommending DMC number 5 pearl cotton, which is what this pink is. So we'll just keep going. I just thought I would point that out, that pretty early on you're going to need to start thinking of all of the embellishment here. And then they also have, if you're going to bead it, how many beads you're going to need for the different pieces and everything. So nice that they give you all of that information. You know, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm thinking I am just going to order a roll of narrow Soutache type braid, because this is going to end up being pretty wide, and that's a whole lot of making little loops, you know. So I think that the Soutache would actually look better for doing things like that. As I'm cutting this out, I wanted to point out that this pattern was originally only in the smaller sizes, which is size 8 through 14. But they've resized it recently for people my size and bigger, you know, which is very appreciated. But if you get the bigger size, it has all of the little ones in there too. So you basically have 2 sets of patterns. You have, like on here, I have this piece that is sized 8 through 14, and then there'll be another one that has the larger sizes. So you get, you know, both sets. So if I get one for my size, there's also, you know, a whole separate set here for someone smaller. So that's cool. I am cutting out my front facing, and I just held it up to myself, and actually I am not going to be lengthening this. I think that the length is fine for me. If you count that from this point, there's going to be another band to make it about that long, and that is at about my waist level. So if I was going to lengthen or shorten on this piece and all of the other bodice pieces, there's a double line here that says lengthen and shorten here. So if you need to, what you would need to do is cut it at that point, spread it apart. Say you want to add 1 inch, spread those 2 pieces 1 inch apart. Put another little scrap piece of tissue paper in there, tape it all together, and just move on. And you need to do the same thing for all of the pieces that are part of that bodice system. The other thing is, as far as all the decorative stuff, it looks like they went overboard making sure that they had all of the decorative stuff on the smaller sizes. Okay, so like this is a small sized pattern, size 8 to 14, and it has all of this. This piece in the larger sizes does not, so you're just going to need to keep these handy to get that designed from when it comes time to transfer it over. Basically, any piece that's going to have the embellishment, I need to underline and get all of that embellishment done before I construct the whole project. So what I'm going to do is take a peek in here, get my heat erasable pen so I can draw all over my pattern, and then erase it and all my marks will disappear. Basically, I'm going to want my back centerpiece, which is this one, and if I'm doing this, the side piece is not going to get embellishment, but it feels like I should do it, should underline it, even though it's not going to, just because it's would be the only part in the bodice then that didn't have any underlining. So basically, the bodice back, bodice front, whoops, that's view B. Bodice front is view A here. The cuff, the sleeve, I'm not doing 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐿, that's for this view here. There is a pocket. There's little pockets here. I will never use those pockets, ever. If I was trying to go strictly authentic, I would definitely be including them, but I am tempted to just leave that little pocket off. It's kind of an odd placement, you know, it's like below bust level, but I'm going to be having a band right here. So for this one, I'm going to skip the pockets. I have just made that executive decision. All right, so I'm not going to be doing the pocket flaps, and I'm not going to be doing the pockets. The waistband, I don't know that they embellish their waistband or not. I'll have to look at that, but it seems like that would be a good one to underline anyway, just for strength. So basically, The only things that I am not going to be underlining on this one, because I'm not lining it, I'm underlining but not lining, two separate issues. So basically everything except the facings, except the back facing and the front facing, will be underlined, okay? And so let me get a couple pieces here, and I'm going to show you in general what I think my plan is going to be. I think I'll start with a cuff because it's small. Okay, so this is the cuff. You're supposed to cut 4 of them. Only 2 of them is going to be embellished, okay? Because only 2 will be on the outside, 2 will be on the inside. And so, as you can see, this does not show all of the design. I'll have to grab that from the smaller piece. I don't want to cut this out exactly. I'm going to actually cut out my underlining fabric a couple inches bigger because I don't want to do my finish trimming until after all the embellishment is on, because sometimes that has a tendency to like shrink things up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is draw where these curves are for 2 of the pockets. One here and one down here, okay? And I flipped my pattern over. So here my pattern was upright, even though it doesn't really make a difference for this. But the same principle will carry over for like the bodice pieces, where I'll do one with the pattern upright, come down below or to another piece of fabric, flip it upside down, and trace out again. And I'm just doing the corners because I can use my ruler to draw the rest of it. This is just to get an idea of where everything is at this point, because I'm going to need to come back and draw in my embellishment, okay? But I want to have the general layout. Now the folkwear patterns, this one I believe they say they include a 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay? The big whatevers are usually 5/8 of an inch. These are 1/2 of an inch, you know. So just be aware of that. All right, so once I have this drawn, I am going to very loosely cut these 2 pieces out. So, oh, so many scissors up here. Let me see here. Oh, and I ironed this. I know you can't tell because it's a little wrinkled down, because this is a very lightweight muslin. I did iron it, and I used a little bit of sizing when I was ironing it just to try to keep some kind of body to it, okay? If you can see, I'm cutting out much bigger than my pieces, okay? So now I have my right and my left here. So I'm just going to set this aside for a second and lay these down. And now I'm going to go get the pattern piece from the smaller size that has the embellishment on it. Okay, so there's going to be different ways I'm going to be doing things. The first one is like on this cuff, the embellishment is just a wavy line, okay? And this is a smaller size, but I can tell from looking at this size that that mark is 1/2 inch. So that's the seam allowance. So using a different colored ink, I'm just roughly gonna come in here, whoops, well, that was not bright. And with my red pen, draw in that 1/2 inch seam allowance so I can see where that is. It's not important to me that I get the exact curve and everything on the corners. It's just to get a rough idea so that when I come back and draw on my wavy line, that I'll know where to put it. So for this one, I am just going to draw, I have another ink here, I'm just going to draw my mark onto the fabric itself. So I've got a black line showing the cutting line. This is actually still good. So I've got my red line showing my seam allowance. I'm going to use blue to show the actual design. So here's a corner, here's the curve. And I can see from here, they're just making like a sine wave, you know, that's basically spread out about a 1/2 inch between each bump. So we're just going to kind of do that. And if it's slightly off, that's okay, because I can tell you, as I sew it on, it's going to get a little bit skewed. But this is just going to give me an idea, so I have something to follow. Oops. Okay, so right here, I should have, at this point, made a loop like that, if I'm following how they're doing it, and then come back around this way. And again, this is a folkwear pattern. It's folk art, which is never perfect, you know? It's just creative. So if you wanted to do some other design here, you could. You could draw vines, you could draw leaves, you know, you could draw whatever. I'm just doing their little back and forth swirlies because I know that's going to be easy to use with that Soutache cording that I just ordered. Okay, so I can tell this is where this curve is. So I'm just going to kind of draw that curve in there and come over here all the way down, and then I end it so that my little braid is tucked into the seam allowance. Okay, so here's the seam allowance. I'm going to end with my braid tucking in there, so that end is going to be hidden. Okay, so that is it. When I get my velvet out of the wash, I'll show you how I'm going to get that cut out. But I'm going to lay this way. This is the opposite one here, again with the corners up here, the curved edges down there. I'm going to draw in everything exactly the same so that I can see I have two opposite pieces. Now I can tell the more I do this, the better I get. So here's the thing, if you do your first one and you hate it, just iron it. Everything will erase and you can start over, you know? So I'm not going to worry about it because, you know, it's fun. This is like an arts and crafts project in so many ways. Okay, but it's with heat erasable pens, it's very forgiving. You can always just erase, start over, and have fun. Okay, so now that I have those two done, I'm just going to pin this pattern piece to it and set it aside and get out my next one, which is going to be one of my bodice pieces. And this is my smaller waistband, and this is the one for my size, and I can look on here and see they do not have any embellishment on that. So this is actually not going to get any either, but I am going to cut out the muslin from this. Now the pieces, there's only two, I think, the side, back, and this piece that I'm underlining but not going to be embellishing. Of those two, I'm going to actually cut out the muslin at the actual pattern size. So this says to cut 2 on fold, okay? So one of these is going to be on the inside, one on the outside. Because it's a band, I'm going to go ahead and underline both of the outside and the inside. So I'm cutting 2 of these out on a fold of my velvet and 2 out on a fold of my muslin. Okay, so for just these 2 pieces, which is piece F and piece C, I've got 2 of these cut to the actual size and 2 of these cut to the actual size. So those are going to go in my pile of, they are ready to just have a piece of velvet cut out of it. The other thing I need to add to this pile is the front facing, which is not being underlined. I will interface it, but that is a whole nother story for another day. So that is going in the pile that needs velvet cut. I'm putting a weight on top of it so it doesn't go anywhere. Let me go ahead and get the back done because that's going to be kind of tricky because it has a lot of stuff on it. So just like the cuff, I've got my piece on here and I am just going to mark the corners so that I know where to make all of my little lines. Down here, I don't know if you can see, it's off camera, but trust me, I'm marking those corners back up here. And since this is a curve and not a straight line, I'm just going to make a few little key dashes there. Okay, So I'm just going to come along and draw where the outside cut line is. Okay, I can kind of see where this is. I'm just going to follow my little dotted lines. And is this a lot of extra work? Well, you bet it is, but that's also half the fun of doing an intensive project like this. This is not a quick and easy sew. Anyway. Okay, so this is the design. Isn't that fun? All right, but that is a whole lot of stuff that I am not going to freehand. So this line is where you cut off for the little waist length one that I'm doing, okay? But what I'm gonna do, and I am hoping that this is gonna work because I haven't used this stuff in a long time, is use this. This is water-soluble tracing stuff for embroidery type things. And so I'm going to cut a piece that is a little bit bigger. And, you know, I just got a whole roll of this at one point. And with it like this, I can use a regular pen and just trace everything down underneath it. So I'm going to put a couple weights on here to hold it, okay? And when I draw it, actually I need it lower just a bit to get this curve down here. Okay. All right. You know what? I'm just going to put a piece of tape on this just to hold it in place for a second. And then I can pull that tape off later, but this way I know it's not going to move. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to get my pen and just start tracing. Okay. And I'm just going to draw this line and trace the entire thing. The ink is only going onto this water-soluble part here. Okay. So that is cool, and it's going to get me very familiar with how all of this is supposed to work. Okay, so I've got this side traced out, and as I was doing this, I was thinking that for this center back piece, because part of it goes straight down the back, it's probably going to be a better idea for me to sew together the back of my muslin down the center back and the back of my velvet down the center back, and get those two basted and placed together before I do this so that I can work on the center back as one complete piece. Because I think that working on it as two pieces is going to be a little bit tricky. So that's going to be my plan. So just so you can see what it would look like, this piece I would then just kind of place on my muslin and secure it either with pins and tape or probably a combination of both, and then I will stitch straight through this as I'm doing my stuff, because it's very hard to mark velvet, but if I mark everything on the underside on the muslin, I think I'll be able to accomplish, you know, very close to the same thing. Okay, so I have 2 layers of muslin here. And my top one is the one that I actually kind of have drawn already. And I am, using different scissors, trimming it down that center back at the line I drew, which is the cutting line, so that I can get, you know, an approximately correct seam allowance. I'm not finishing off any edges on this right now because I don't need to right now. I'll deal with that later. But just down this center back now, I'm going to just do a row of stitching at a 1/2 inch seam allowance and then press that seam allowance open. All right, so I have it sewed together and that seam allowance pressed open. Okay, so now I'm layering my pattern piece back over, and my pattern edge is coming all the way over to where I can see the underneath of the seam allowance on the bottom. So it's the seam line is 1/2 inch in, okay? So with that, getting my black pen, and I've got my weights all over it just to hold it down for a second, I'm gonna come back here and just roughly outline where the cutting line is going to be. Once I get this done on this side, I'm going to flip my pattern piece over and do the same thing over here. Okay, so that's pretty good. So if I flip this now in this way, again, overlapping this edge down here, like that. Putting my weights back on, my 1980s vintage weights that they do not currently make, but you might find on eBay. Always having people ask me about them because they are fabulous. I think it was a June Taylor company weight, but I got them in the 80s back at House of Fabrics, and I don't think that they are a current product of them, but they should make them again because they're great because they're nice and big and flat. And now I should be able to get an idea of the whole size of my back piece here, okay? So if I get my little design, half of it is going to line up. I want to make sure I have a good seam allowance here. No embellishment is in. And where this comes to an edge, I want that to be on my seam line, okay? Now, if you look here, the curve just kind of ends right there. Don't know if you can see, but trust me, that's what's happening. So let's just go ahead and tape this down right now. If I tape this here, and I'll be pinning over my tape too, you know, just to make double sure that everything stays the same. And I get my heat erasable pen, okay, I can just get my ruler and continue this line to the edge, okay, and continue this curve to the edge. You know, I'll get the idea as I'm doing it. Okay, so I actually had to adjust over because to make the design actually end on that center seam, so this is not exactly level here. I'll just be erasing this and redrawing it when the time comes, but I just wanted to show you that it is pretty well marked here. So when I get my velvet out, I'm just going to cut a big piece of velvet that's this big size, you know, with the extra seam allowance and everything on all the other edges, and cut that out. Okay, so welcome back to another day, if I can figure out where to clip this thing. I was thinking about this, my whole project and everything, and I was getting concerned because these designs for that Soutache stuff is going to be so intricate, and to have two different layers, one of them being a napped fabric that, you know, historically does not want to behave, and then a separate one. I made a couple executive decisions in my sleep last night, and I just tried one of them out, and so I want to show you how that's going to work. But basically, I am going to be using a Fusible. I have two different kinds here. I have this stuff, which is basically just that stitch witchery. It's not on any backing paper or anything that you can just slide in. And then I have this stuff, which is heat and bond, and it's basically the same thing, but it has backing paper on one side, so you iron it on, pull off the backing paper, put the next one on top, and then iron that. So I'm gonna flip the camera down because what I did is I've already fused the back piece, and the here you can see on the muslin side, remember I did the two pieces and sewed it together. Okay, so I have a very defined center back. I decided I didn't want to mess with another set of seam allowances while I'm doing all the curlicues. So I just took one solid piece of my, you know, I don't even know what this color is, but velvety stuff. And I fused it, but I only fused, because I'm running short on that stuff, and I only fused it in this area up here where all of that design is going to be. So I'm not too sure which side I'm going to be putting these little pieces on. So let me flip the camera down so you can get a closer look at what I've done. Okay, alrighty, so I'm not too sure why that spot is darker than the rest. Whatever, I'm not going to stress about it. So these are my design pieces, and it's easier if you can see this on the right side of the fabric. while you're working, but because it's a nap, it's going to want to shift. So I'm still thinking that even though I have these two parts fused into one, I'm still going to be primarily looking while I'm working from the underside, okay? So I will be putting these back down, and I can barely see the outline that I drew before of my pattern size. So if I set this back over here with its little tapes, and the other one over here, I think that that is going to work out pretty well. Okay, so for these sleeves, very wide pieces. I just got 2 cut out of my muslin here. The only embellishment is going to be up here at the pleats at the very top after the pleats are made. So on the smaller size, you can see that's their little design. Because that's after the pleats are made and I'm going to be having a lot of pressing and everything, I'm not actually going to transfer those over right now. It's a small enough design that I will deal with that later after I get this done. So I wanted to show you, I got almost everything cut out, but I did not have enough of this fabric to do the inside lining of the waistband. So that inside of my waistband is just going to be the same muslin as the inside of everything else. I think that's going to be fine. But everything else, including the cuffs, I was able to get both sides on, so that's good. So I'm just going to put this little hunk of scrap aside because you never know when you're going to need just an emergency piece of that for something. So the other piece that has a lot of embroidery stuff here is this front. So just like the back, I'm going to put my fabric aside here, get my water-soluble tracing paper stuff, put that over this, and with just a regular ballpoint pen, I'm going to trace over it. I completely forgot. I was also not able to cut out my facing pieces. These are also going to be muslin, you know. It is what it is, and I am okay with that because it's a folk project. And in folk projects, you do with what you have, you know? I think that that's appropriate. I thought I would mention one of the things that made me want to do this project is this design. It's actually based on a Spanish, almost like a conquistador type jacket. I mean, we don't want to go there, but hey, they did get it because they were being, you know, taken over by the Spaniards. But anyhow, a couple years ago, I was watching a Christian Dior show, and they had a whole bunch of like Spanish influence, and it was really cool. And they had some little short jackets that had really amazing soutache stuff all over it, and they were really cute. And I feel like I've just been having that in my brain ever since. And so when I found this pattern, because it's a little over the top and everything, I was thinking that, you know, it's not going to be exact. We are not going for I'm going to duplicate Christian Dior. It's more of like that same feel, if that makes any sense. So anyhow, hello and welcome to another day. And I've been thinking and I've made some changes. First of all, this is beautiful. This is what comes with the pattern. But I think, for me, for a somewhat novice soutache person, going to be doing it on a machine, I've never done anything like this before, that is an incredibly small, tight little detailed design. And I don't know that I'd be able to do it. So these are lovely, you know, but I'm going to set those aside. I went on Pinterest and found some larger, more swooshy kind of soutache things. This is going to go on the center back instead of, you know, the other one. These are going to go down the front. I think that's going to be a whole lot easier. They had this little thing here. If I feel like putting that on the cuff, I don't know. I haven't decided that yet. But what I also did is I went on the 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞.com and I bought a couple of these because, you know, I was running low. And these are 5 yards. For some reason, when I was buying this, I was thinking 5 feet. So I bought 2 of them. So now I have 10 yards of heat and bond. But I wanted to tell you, I was previously using some very old heat and bond. This has got to be like 20 years old. And the quality has gone up dramatically. This is a lot more flexible and everything. So, you know, if you're using 20-year-old crusty heat and bond, they have a good deal. I can't remember exactly how much these rolls are. I'm thinking they were like about $12 or $13 for 5 yards. But yeah, they're great. So since I have so much, what I am doing is just fusing the entire piece of my muslin to my, couldn't remember the word for velvet, to velvet, okay? And so instead of just having it just where, you know, being kind of sparse and putting it just where the design is, like on the back and things, I'm just doing the entire piece. So I've already did the front. I'm just going to do the cuffs really quick. So I have all of these marks on here. Yeah, we're just going to go over those. They'll disappear. That's all fine. I'm going to cut out some heat and bond, and like on this piece, my cuff is actually smaller, so I'm just gonna crease it with my thumb so I can kind of see that outline. Get my paper scissors, reaching over here, gonna cut that out, fuse it to my muslin, and then I'll show you the shiny part when I fuse it to the velvet. I wanted to point out I got my cord, so technically it's not Soutache cord. A lot of times those have like a double cord, and they have like a cording on the inside that you can cinch up one side or the other. This is more of a braided cord, and it's a lot less expensive, and it's very flexible. And this is a very big experiment kind of thing, and that's why I'm doing the unlined version, because if it goes fabulous and I really love the Soutache idea, you know, maybe then I will spring for the real deal. But for right now, I think that's cool. It's the color is denim, and so that's going to look like, let me find a piece here that's open. It's going to look like this, okay? I think it's going to show up well. I like that color combination. So for my cuffs, I have 2 of my velvet cut to the actual size. Those are going to be like my cuff facings. And so for the side that I'm going to be doing the design work on, first I'm going to fuse my heat and bond paper side up. Oops, I probably did not need that steam, but you know. And I find that the newer stuff is melting a lot quicker than the old stuff. I think my old stuff was just, you know, needed to go. I think it hit an expiration date. Okay, so now when I peel this off, very nice and shiny, you know, loving that, and it's flexible, which is nice too. So then I'm going to put one of my little pieces of velvet on it. I am not going to iron on this side though. I am going to flip it over so my velvet is up against the wool and iron the back. I've done this enough with this fabric to know that it's okay. You know, the velvet does survive this. I suppose if you had really high quality stuff, then a needle board or something like that might be a fun thing to use, but not today, not for me. Okay, so then it's all can act as one piece. So once I have the other one cut out like this, then I will cut out my shapes, and these will be good. Actually, no, I am not going to cut these out until after I get my Soutache design pulled on. So for right now, that's how I am applying everything. I am going to go ahead and fuse the backing onto my waistband that I cut to the actual pattern size. So I've already fused it to my muslin, keep forgetting that word too, as you can see, and it goes right up to the edge. And I wanted to point out, if you're going to do this, do yourself a big favor, and if you're doing something where the fusibleness goes all the way to the edge, stick something underneath it. This is a piece of Teflon sheet. I'm just gonna tack it on here real quick, because if not, that fusible stuff is going to bleed over onto your ironing board, and then you have to clean it off. Ask me how I learned. Ask me how I learned. Anyway, I'm going to press it from this side. I just wanted to tack that on there to the beginning just to get it in place. And you can see that my velvet is a little bit bigger. That's okay. I can trim it to size later, but I just want to get this attached. This is going to act kind of like interfacing onto my waistband. And then if you remember, I am going to be just using another piece of muslin on the inside as a lining for it, or as a facing. And I got it fused on, flipped it over, and I just noticed this little area right here. I don't know why it's like that. I didn't notice it before. I hope that I'll be able to put most of that in the seam allowance, you know, and all of that kind of stuff, but it looks like there's some kind of a little flaw there, so that's sad. But anyway, we will move on. So for the waistband, I have just this piece, and then one more that is just the muslin that's going to be the facing. Now I am going to do the entire sleeve, both sleeves. Is this a pain? Yes, it is a pain. But I can tell you it's simplifying my project a lot, because I had so many pattern pieces everywhere, because for every Soutache one, I'd have to have a pattern piece of a smaller size with the design, the larger size with my actual size, and then linings and, backings and velvet and all kinds of stuff. And I had so many layers, so I can put all my smaller size pieces away. So that's actually helping me organize over there. And I wanted to tell you, for the backing, I put a letter F on the side that needs to be fused, because I want to make sure I end up with two opposite sleeves. So I have my little cheater, that's an F. I know it looks weird, but that's an F. So I'm going to put my heat and bond on this side, you know, get it started, trim around it, flip it over, do the velvet on both of my sleeves. Okay, so I've got all of that done. The last thing on my fusible kind of list that I need to take care of over here is the interfacing for my front and back facing pieces. Now, it might just be me, and I might have thrown something away, but I could not find a back facing in the bigger sizes. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the smaller one, and I'm just going to kind of visually extend it another ½ inch or so out here. And that should give me way plenty, you know. But what I'm going to be using is my typical very lightweight fusible interfacing that I've shown over and over again. Just because I don't want this to be super stiff, you know, but I want it to maintain its shape. So let me go ahead and get that fused to the facing pieces, and then I'm going to call it good for a little while. I am kind of tired of doing the fusible thing, and so I'm going to go downstairs and take a break. Okay, so welcome to the next day. I am working on the back, and what I have done, you know, I have my muslin fused here, and I just first of all took my pattern piece, overlaid it, and with a heat erasable pen, honestly it could be just a regular pencil, I traced out the cutting line for my back piece so I'd have an idea where everything is. And then I took my little paper that I got off Pinterest, and I am just transferring this design old school style. So basically I have it just taped on, and I have a sharp pencil, and every ½ inch, or so, I am just sticking that pencil in and giving it a little twist. And that's just going to transfer basically a little dotted line image of this entire design on here. And then I'll be able to use that as a guide to, you know, connect the dots then, and then use that as a guide for my stitching line on my machine. So first things first, I'm just poking. And I don't know if you can see, those are all my little pokes, you know, just going through. So I will be back shortly. Okay, so I've got it all punched through. Got a little cramp in my thumb, but you know, life will go on. So I'm going to pull this off, and let me put this up to the camera so you can see all of my tiny little dots. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just kind of, with this close enough by that I can look at it, I am just going to kind of connect the dots and draw my design in. I'm still using my pencil, that's okay. And All of this is going to be visible on the inside of my jacket because I am not lining it. This is going to be visible, but that's okay. Either I'm going to be wearing it and no one will see, or it will be a testament to all of the work that was involved in creating this piece. So, you know, either way, I don't think it'll be the end of the world if people see all of this on the inside here. You may be asking, why aren't you using your heat erasable pen? And the answer is, I don't want this to disappear. There is a chance that I might have to iron something, I'm not sure yet. And if I do not want all of these little lines and dots to disappear. Just don't want to go there, so just old school pencil. Okay, so now that that is done, it's actually helpful doing this because you get to know your design a lot better. And I know now that in my design it's going to start, you know, at one of these points and finish at the other one. So it like goes here, wraps all the way down around, and it ends here. Okay, so that's good to know. And the other thing is my braid I'm using is this denim colored blue. So what I'm going to be using is thread that matches this. Okay, I was debating on doing white on the inside, but I'm thinking I'm just going to use this denim blue for both the bobbin and the needle, okay? And so at this point I'm putting this aside, but I'm just going to use just the plain straight stitch and work my way very carefully around this design. And what I'm going to end up with is an outline of this on the outside and on the inside, okay? Because when I go to put this on, I need to look at this side. And it is just about impossible to, you know, put those kind of marks onto a velvet nappy side. So this should do it, you know. Just thinking out loud here, it's not that I've actually accomplished this yet. This is my first piece. So let me go ahead, load a bobbin with the right color thread, get myself situated, and I'll show you how it goes. Okay, so I am using Rosie, and what I decided to do, because she's just a straight stitch machine, she's got a big motor, but she's just straight stitch, and I wanted to be able to almost do like free motion quilting when I'm tracing this on, okay? But before I actually put this on, I was playing with a scrap to make sure my tension was right and everything, and I just put a little piece of the velvet on here just to see what it would look like. And I think it's going to work for what I need because it's going to give me a good, you know, traceable outline there. I do have a, you know, darning foot, free motion foot, whatever on here, but it doesn't actually work because she doesn't have the little lever over, or the little place over here that actually catches this to keep it open. I'm just using it because it's the foot that I have that has the biggest open space there. Okay, so, you know, her being her feed dogs do not drop, so they're still raised up. She does not have reverse. You know, I just have her stitch length set at 0 right now, and I'm just kind of working her around. So let me show you. This is always a little awkward because the camera is in my way, but let's just get started here. Okay, so just tracing it out like this. I think that that's going to work really well. So let me get this little bit finished. Again, my design ends right there, and then I'll take it back to the table and show you what she looks like. Okay, so here is my back. And I've been debating because, hang on a second. No, I think we're okay. I've been debating because I've been trying to figure out if I should try to attach this on a machine or by hand. And I think I'm going to do it by hand. Just because of all of these little corners, you know, tracing it out just like that is one thing, but making sure that I change directions because I don't know. I'm going to get a scrap and put a different foot on the machine and just try it, just to see how difficult it'll be to handle. If it's too difficult, then I'll come back and show you how I'll do it by hand, but let me just have a moment of experimentation here. Okay, so here is my little test piece. And I tried like 5 different presser feet on here. And the one that I think worked the best for me is one that's made for pin tucks. And I'll show you that over at the machine. It was just hard to find a foot that had an opening big enough that I could see where all the little curves are, and that would still give me a guide for my cord to lay in and everything like that. So it's going to be very slow and go, but I am going to try to do this over on my machine. So let me go ahead and get it set up, and I'll show you how that works. All right, so I'm starting it, you know, at the point that's opposite this one where my design starts. And I'm pulling about 3 inches or so of this cording, and I'm just letting that hang out the back side here, okay? And this is my pin tuck foot. It's basically has 5 little grooves underneath, so you can layer pin tucks right next to each other. But I like it because it's short enough that I can see what's coming up, okay? Because like a lot of, I even tried rolled hem feet, you know, to feed some through there, but they were so long and there's so little space to view through there that it was hard to, you know, keep everything accurate. Another foot would probably work well, like a big fat cording foot or something, but I don't have one that'll work with this, so, you know, you improvise. Anyhow, I'm just gonna keep this in my lap, I think, because otherwise it's gonna go everywhere. And just kind of get started. The main thing is I have to stop with the needle down, lift the presser foot a little bit, and turn it. And when I see that it's turning again, just keep going, okay? So this is going to take a while because literally I'm only doing a few stitches at a time. I think when I get to like the longer swoops, it'll be a little faster. But for right now, I'm working around all of this. I want to show you, I have switched over to a generic open-toed foot. That's working better for me. I was having trouble because my needle was not exactly in line with one of the grooves on my little pin tuck foot here, and it was shoving the braid off to the side. And that's not good because then, you know, it doesn't actually stitch in it. And because of that, there's a couple places up here, I think at the very top, where it got off, and I may have to come back with a needle and thread and just, you know, fix that. But I think it's looking good. You know, for my very first time ever doing this, I think it looks fabulous. So I'm just going to keep on going. So still every now and then stopping. Oh, and another thing that seems to help is that if I don't tug on the braid, because it seems like tugging it is going to make it slightly, you know, skinnier, and I want it nice and fat, but at the same time, I don't want it to pucker, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't cut this to actual size yet, in case when I'm done with this, it's shrunk in a little bit because of all the stitching. I have a little bit of leeway out there before I cut out my pattern. So let me go ahead and get this finished. Well, it's time to talk about what we've learned today. So this is my wrong side. You can see I had a little bobbin issue there. Not too sure what was going on. And this is my right side. I still have my little tails hanging out, you know. I don't see how I could possibly have done the original design. This was so much trouble just getting around these curves, and they're larger compared to the original design, that I'm glad I made that switch. Anyway, I need to get these tails tucked in, so I'm just getting my little pointy awl. And I'm going to work a hole into my fabric here. You'll probably see it a little bit better on this side. And then I need to thread it through. So I'm going to try to use a big yarn needle here, see if that will work, to pull this through here. Okay. Come on, there it goes. Okay, so now that raw end is on the inside, and I can just whip it down, whip stitch it down here, you know. I'm gonna actually singe the ends of these so that they won't wanna fray out on me. I'm gonna pull this one in just the same way. And then I'm just gonna set this aside for a minute because there's still so much to do, and I'm trying to figure out what that is. I don't know, it's probably just a crease. Anyway, this is a very lightweight, you know, cheap velvet, and I have a feeling that this would probably have been easier if I was using a more substantial, like velveteen kind of piece. But at the same time, you know, I wanted a softer jacket, and sometimes velveteen stuff can be pretty thick. So, you know, we live and learn. This is a big experiment to see how this pattern is going to fit and how the whole process goes together. So far, I'm happy with it because, you know, learning experience. So I've just cut them to about 1 inch long. Get my little flame going here. I'm just gonna singe the ends in since this is just a synthetic, and that's gonna make them want to stay unfrayed. Ooh, that's hot, don't touch that. And yeah, so I still need to do the front pieces, and I'm gonna be using this type of an edge, like kind of like that down the front. So I need to go ahead and get all of this traced through with my pencil. Once I get all of those traced, I'll show you how that design layout is going to go, and I'm just going to set this piece aside for a little bit. Okay, so I wanted to show you something. My microphone is charging, so that's why the sound is different. This is one of my front pieces, and I just traced basically a smaller version of this onto here on sideways, and it doesn't have the whole top part because it felt like it was getting a little busy up there. So this is what I have on my front right now. There'll be more down here. But what I wanted to show you is I have decided that I am putting this on by hand, and I've only done like maybe 1 inch so far, but I'm liking this way better than by machine. It is much less stressful, and basically looking at the right side, I can, here is the stitch I just made right here. So I will put it back down where it came up, move forward about 1/8 of an inch or so along my little outline, come back up and put my thread through the braid at that point and go back down where it came up. And just keep working myself around. Basically, I'm just doing like a running stitch and catching my little braid. But I think that doing it this way, one, it'll be a lot easier going around these tight little loops, you know, because this is much smaller than the one on the back. And my hope is that since, you know, I can control the tension and everything a lot better here than on the machine, that it won't want to pucker up. So, just letting you know, that's what we are doing now, this one by hand. I'm going to go downstairs, put something on the telly, you know, get a cup of something warm and cozy on this rainy day, and just work on this for a little bit. And I will be back shortly and let you know how it goes. Hello and welcome back. It has actually been several days. I was working on my stuff here and other projects, but I'm ready to jump back into this. And so basically I have both of my fronts. They look like this, all of my back pieces and side back pieces. With this embellishment, I still need to tie these through the back and cinch a couple of these down. So I'll be doing that, you know, off camera because you don't need to see. But once I get that done, I'm going to need to cake all of my bodice pieces, so my center back, side back, and front pieces, and actually cut them out according to the actual pattern size, okay? And once I get that done, I am going to serge around the edges to hold the two layers together. I have those back pieces, bodice pieces done, And if you remember when I was trying to get my facings cut out, I could not find the back facing for my size. So while this piece is nice and flat, I want to deal with that now. So this is the right side. That's the wrong side with the interfacing on it. So I'm putting it right side down. And I can see this is the fold line here. That's going to be my center back, okay? So I'm just going to line that up with where this seam is right there. So that is center back to center back at this point. All right, so with that on there, I am just going to trace along here. And when I cut this out, I cut this piece way too big, just so I'd have flexibility to draw it out as I needed it. Okay, so now that is going to be my top of my bodice facing. So this is the front facing here, and I need to make sure that they're going to line up. Okay, so when I put this, so that at this point, it says 1/2 inch seam allowance, at about 1/2 inch seam allowance they cross. Okay, that means that the end of this facing piece is right here. All right, so I'm going to just kind of start it here and blend it down, and I will be serging all the way around this piece, okay? Cut this and then match the other side to it so that, you know what, I'm going to cut this whole neckline first. There's probably 100 other ways to do this, but this is just the way that's easy for me right now, okay? All right, so now I can fold this in half here. Oopsie, I'm just going to match up these shoulder lines, and I can see from this side where that needs to be, and I'm doing it this way because they were not uniform, you know. They were just as they needed to be so that I could get them cut out really roughly. All right, so now I have my back facing that will match up to my front facing. So I'm going to go ahead and serge around this piece and the front facing pieces also. And these do already have the interfacing fused to them. Okay, so I am getting ready to connect my bodice side back to my back. And I am just using these pins to stick straight in where the notches are. This is a very aggressive nap. You see that? It does not want to sit still. So the close I can get is just an approximate. When I push down, it's going to want to push one way or another. That's just life with funky velvet, okay? So anyway, this is a princess seam. So I have 2 notches, which is usual, and if you can see, they are going to match up fine if I just lay them this way. There's going to be some cutting and shaping. I don't know that they're going to have a stay stitch around it. It doesn't say that they are. I am going to be clipping some notches though, just so that these are going to lay nicer. But at this point, you know, because my fabric is what it is, the first step for me is just to match up where these notches are and kind of smush my velvet together at that point. Okay, come down. And you can see how it's not going to want to lay well. So there's one side that's curved out, one side that's curved in. We want them both to match up. Usually I would run a row of stay stitching right here. But with the understanding that I already have 2 layers, they are already fused together, okay? So this layer of muslin is kind of working like a stay tape in a way. I'm just going to make some tiny clips right here, about 1/4 inch deep, okay? Which should be just enough that I can pull this out and it's going to match up here. Those little clips are going to let it flex open enough that I can get this matched up, okay? So let me stick a pin right here in the middle. My goodness, this is getting thick. Okay, So with that, below the notches should be pretty straight, above the notches should be pretty straight. I'm going to try to get it so that the bottom matches up. If it doesn't exactly, I will even that out later, if I could speak correctly. And actually at this point, it's looking like it might be about 1/8 of an inch longer here than here. I'm not going to stress out about that, not one bit, okay? So once I have all of this pinned together, I am going to stitch it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay? Now up here, this little point is going to stick out just a bit, but at the point, 1/2 an inch in, that's where it's crossing, okay? And if I do that, how is it going to work? Well, look, it looks like I have a whole lot extra up here at that point. So maybe when I was making my notches, it just shifted up. So since I'm short down here, I'm thinking that's where my extra is. So I'm just going to put a pin here, pull these out. I already have my notches in where notches need to be, which is fine. Match it up at the bottom, and since I have that difference, go ahead and get it all pulled back together. It's velvet, it's a pain, honestly, but let me get it pushed together, stitched at 1/2 inch, and then I'll show you how I'm going to clip it so that I can press the seam allowance open. All right, so at this point I have this side pressed open. I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to go through the motions with this side here, okay? So let me move my ham for a moment. If I just lay this kind of flat, which it's not supposed to be, it does have a curve into it, okay? And I try to press it open, you'll see that one side is too short, one side's too long, okay? So this side over here is too short, and that's where I made some small clips. I am going to extend those clips longer, up to within probably about 1/8 of an inch of that seam line, because I want to be able to push this so that it's going to lay flat. Now, over here on this side, it is too thick, and this is a very thick fabric. So what I'm actually going to do is just kind of pushing it. I can see in the ruffles here where the most extreme gathers are. I'm going to clip a little notch out of it. Okay, so hopefully that's going to lay a little bit flatter at that point when I press it open. So these little triangles, you know, they're just small notches. Nothing extravagant there, and I think one more down here and I should be okay. All right, so they look kind of like that, all right? So now I'm going to put my ham underneath here because this is a curve. The whole reason for this princess seam stuff here is so we can work some shape into this jacket. So I do have my steam iron. I am not pressing hard at all. I am just barely hovering, okay? But I am putting a good amount of steam on here. And now I'm pressing it with my hand, okay? It actually feels really good because it's kind of cold outside. All right, so now that is good. So I'm going to move it down my ham, you know, so that I have a curve to work on, which is lovely. And do the same thing again, just kind of hovering and steaming and then pressing it with my hands. Okay, so that's pretty good. So let's see what it looks like on the outside now. Not bad, not bad. I'm going to give it a little coat of steam here too. A little smoothing. Oh my goodness, look what I did to my camera. Sorry about that. A little smoothing with my hands. Let me do the steam over here. Okay, so if I put this down, hopefully you'll be able to see that there is some shape there, okay? Maybe if I flip it this way. And right now, because, you know, it hasn't been washed and all of that kind of stuff, it is a little bit stiff. It feels almost like a canvas at this point because of the fused muslin here. but that will soften up with use, okay? But you can hopefully see it's kind of curving up, okay? So that is what these princess seams are for, because that's where my shoulder blades are going to be coming in. So I need to go ahead and get my front pieces, and they are going to be sewed on right here at the side seams. Wait, what is that? What is that? Oh, that's just the direction of the fabric. Look, this stuff. It tricks your eye into thinking that there's a problem, and then you go down and look, and it's like, no, there's no problem. It's just the way it is. Okay. All right, so at this point, I am pinning my bodice front to my back, up at the shoulders and the side seams. And I'm going to be stitching these at half of an inch here, and then when I'm done pressing them open, these should be easy to press open because they are just straight seams. Okay, so they are pressed open, and this is what my bodice is looking like right now. I think it's kind of fun. I'm very happy that my designs are somewhat symmetrical. You know, when you're using two separate pieces and they're not exact and everything, it's a little tricky. But yeah, that's the front. And this is the back, so that's fun. I need to put this aside for just a second and get my facing pieces out. So let me get, this is my back. These are my fronts. I need to sew them together up at the shoulder. I'm sewing them right sides together, okay? So the interface side is out. I'm going to sew them up here on each shoulder at 1/2 inch seam allowance and press these open. Okay, so now that this is done, I need to finish off the outside edge. I know I already serged it, but what they're going to want you to do is just turn the outside edge under. Okay, so this is the wrong side here. Just a little bit, if you can see, it's just beyond my serging that I'm turning it, and then run a straight stitch down here, probably about 1/8 of an inch in is what I'm going to do, just to hold that in place. And right now I'm thinking I really don't want to change the thread in Rosie again, and I have a white thread on my Meister pearl over there, so I'm going to switch machines to do this. It's been so long since I started this video, I'm not sure if I introduced the machine. So this is pearl. I know it looks a little dark here, sorry about that. She's my fabulous Meister. And over here is Rosie. She's a tank, and that's the one that we're working on with the colored thread, okay? So when I am coming around the curve, like for the neckline here, I wanted to show you because it can be a little troublesome because the outside edge is bigger than the inside. Get something pointy. I got a little awl here. You can use the tip of a seam ripper or something and just tip it in and push it with the little point of whatever you are using as your guide as you work it in. Okay, so you can see I'm a couple inches ahead here, turning it up the amount I want, and just feeding it in with the tip of my little pointer awl thing, okay? And that way you're going to save your fingers, but also you'll be able to work in a little bit at a time, and it won't get all, you know, 𝐥𝐤𝐤'd where you end up with a big old crease or something at one side. So just wanted to show you that. Okay, so back over here at my table, I am clipping my facing to my bodice because pins are a bit troublesome with this fabric. Okay, so it looks like I have a little bit extra here. I must not have measured it exactly. That's okay, it's not any more than it's going to give me any trouble for working in that ease. But what I wanted to show you is, you see that crease back there? I think that when I was cutting it, like you remember, I was just, you know, making it work. I think I have the back of the neckline too flat. So in order to get rid of that crease, I'm going to move a couple of these little clips out of the way and put a few little 1/4 inch deep or so notches here because I don't want to recut this piece, okay? And that should let it flex enough. And actually, look, if I let it set in just a bit, you can see it better from this side, okay? If I just let it set in just a little bit, so I have some of this appearing from the outside, I think that's going to work. So what I'm going to do is just put a pin here, okay? And with this pin holding all my layers together, I'm going to draw a new cutting line right here. And this cutting line will not be serged because it's a little too late in the ball game for that. But let me get it trimmed off here. Can't find the scissors I want, so I'm going to make it work with these. Okay. All right, so now that I have that trimmed off, yay, now I'm ready to go ahead and clip these on. I just did not want that facing in the back to have that little pucker, you know. So reforming it is the way to go for me. So now what I need to do is stitch all the way around here, you know, starting here, going all the way around at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, very carefully connecting the facing to the bodice. Okay, so it is on here, and what the instructions are going to want you to do is carefully fold it and top stitch it from the outside. Because my facings are not the same fabric as the outside, and I want to really make sure they are not visible from the outside, and because I just want to, instead of doing that, I am going to understitch this. So let me go over there and grab my good scissors, because I need to make a lot of little clips around here so that I can fold this over and it'll lay nice and flat. Okay, so I've got my little notches clipped in there. More on the back, you know, from the shoulder area here, around the back of the neck, because that's a very sharp curve. And then I just kind of did it the entire way, because there's another curve right here. I just don't want to have to open it up and add more later. So I'm going to be starting here, okay? I want all of my seam allowance to be over here underneath the facing where nobody's going to see, okay? So pulling them this way, from the top I'm going to be looking, and I'm going to be doing a row of straight stitching right about here, okay? All the way around, making sure I'm going through all of this stuff behind it. So it'll probably get pretty slow around the neckline because I'm going to need to, you know, make sure I have every couple inches that all of this stuff is where it's supposed to be, and then move on and move on. But it's going to make all the difference in the world in the way that it looks when it's finished. Okay, so with that done, here's my stitching. I'm going to turn that to the inside, and it'll turn a lot easier than if it did not have understitching. But what I'm going to need to do is press it. So when I press it, the understitching is going to curl the whole seam and everything towards the underneath. So if you can see here, the edge of the velvet is showing, and that's just because it wouldn't normally be peeking out that much, okay? I folded the little hairs back, so it's peeking out about that much, all right? That is because of my understitching, and that's going to keep it being non-visible from the outside. So let me go ahead over to my ironing board, carefully, you know, doing my steamy press with my hand and all of that kind of stuff with the pressing hand, because I'm going around curves, to get this tucked in nicely. Okay, one thing I wanted to point out while I was over at my ironing board, I did trim out the velvet layer in the seam allowances up here at the shoulder. I think I tossed them already, just that little strip because it was quite bulky. Okay, but now this is in, it looks nice. In the instructions, what they're going to want you to do is tack this to the shoulder seam allowances, okay? So with the needle and thread, coming back in here and just tacking that in place there and here. Part of me wants to do the entire thing, but I'm just not going to yet. I think that if I get this finished and it's too floppy and it drives me crazy, I can come back later and tack this down a little more. Since this is not a lined jacket, it'll still be visible for me to get to, okay? But that facing is covering up a lot of, you know, this kind of stuff in here, so that is nice. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to pop this on my dress form and grab the waistband pieces. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. As far as decoration, on the pattern, oh, where is my stuff? Here it is. On the pattern, their display model also had what they were using as their braid being stitched here along the edges of where these two are being joined together. At the point that I have to sit down and do a lot of hand stitching again, I think I might do that just because I kind of like the look of it, you know? So I will just be doing that by hand with a needle and thread along this seam line at some future moment, which I don't know yet. But I need to do that actually before I put the waistband on, because I need to be able to cover it up down here. So I may just have to take a quick break, you know, go downstairs and do that really quick while I'm sitting in my comfy chair, and then I will be back shortly. Okay, so let me show you. I got my little blue trim put on there. I like the way that looks. I think that's really cool. So I need to set this aside for just a minute because I need to work on my waistband. And the way that this is going to go is I have one that I already have muslin fused to. Okay, that's going to be my outside part. I don't know what that is. That's a flaw in the fabric, and that's frustrating, but it is what it is at this point, you know. This piece is going to be my inside facing of my waistband, okay? And the way we're going to do it is I am going to be sewing the facing piece on with the sewing machine and then come back and just hand whip stitching the velvet side down, which is the way that they have it here. Because the dark side is the right side, okay? So this back part here is the facing. It'll make sense in a minute, hopefully. But because of that, what I'm going to have to do is set this aside. Yes, I'm going to be putting it so that it's sewing the right side of the velvet to my muslin. But I'm going to need to fold. Well, first of all, this is not even matching up right. I think I cut it slightly off because, you know, it wants to shift back and forth, which is causing me headaches. Not going to lie, causing me headaches. All right, so let me get this bottom part pinned here so at least I know that part is stable. And I'm going to come up, and at the point that is 1/2 inch from the edge, I'm just going to stick a pin in there before I let anything go so I can at least be aware that that is good. So if I put my ruler here and measure that, yeah, that's 1/2 inch. I am good, okay? So I have my velvet layer folded down right there. And I'm going to stick one more pin here. Okay. Why did I decide to do this project? I don't know. Oh, and I pinned the wrong one. Okay. Hello. So I had to put a quick break in here because I'm editing this and I just saw something. You are going to see me fight with this waistband for a long time because it was way too short. And at this point where I say, oh, I did the wrong side, I did not. I did the right side and then I changed it to the wrong side, which because, you know, it's slightly curved, so the outside, one side of the waistband is longer than the other. If I had just stayed the way I was, used the outside curve of that waistband, it probably would have been fine. But you're going to see me jump through all kinds of hoops, adding 4 inches to this waistband, you know, and giving myself some kind of a migraine over it. And that's all it is. So if you're planning on doing this, use the larger size curve of that waistband. You're going to be fine. I just wasn't paying attention to the instructions clear enough, and there you go. So, you know, watch my agony, but there is an easy way around it. See how this curves this way? All right, the top part is what goes to the jacket, the bottom part is the bottom hem. And I did my little curvy thing on the bottom hem part. So matching up the bottom side, because it's the bottom lip of the smile down here, coming up towards the top, folding it down, 1/2 inch down. Yay, that's better. Okay. So with that done on this side, I need to do that same thing over here on this side also. I have to pin this whole lower edge together also, okay, which hopefully won't be as bad. And I'm going to need to sew the sides and this lower edge at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So starting up here, you know, anchoring this velvet side down here to 1/2 inch, curve all the way over, and then back up, keeping this side anchored down, okay? Okay, so this is a disaster, but I'm gonna make the best of it because it's all I can do at this point. When I was sewing it, I was looking at my velvet side. You know, you just have to make a choice, and at that point, at the very beginning, I came over here, came down. I did not notice I had this little fold right there, which isn't a huge deal normally, but because of that little fold, when I got down here to the end, you know, it was too short. So everything is set in about 1/8 of an inch further in than it was. If you can see, I put a row of stitching where it was supposed to be, you know, which is way close. So then I did a second row just to secure everything. I'll just ease that extra 1/8 of an inch in. That's not a big deal. But I am going to understitch this piece also. So I'm just going to come in here and take some of the bulk out of these corners, you know, all of this stuff. And once again, the side that I'm going to be stitching on is this side, the facing side. So if I flip this right side out, I'm probably not going to worry about the sides here too much because I'm only going to be able to go like that far, and that's not very much. But the bottom part is what I'm going to be focusing on. So wherever I can start, and actually I'm going to have to start on this side up here. Okay. So I'll get my presser foot in as close to this corner as I can, probably right about here, and get started. And once again, with all of the seam allowances going towards the facing side, okay, I'm going to do a row of stitching right about here, okay, all the way across the bottom to as far as I can get over to this corner, which is probably going to be like right about there. Okay? Okay, so I have it pressed and I have it folded in half here. I'm marking my center back. That's all I'm marking at this point. I know that on the pattern piece itself, they do have a notch on there, but I'm not worrying about that at this point. So let me get my jacket here, and I'm going to be looking at the wrong side here and placing it so that my center back that I just marked on my facing is going to line up with the center back here. Okay, so I'm going to open that up so that I can get that pinned in place. Alrighty, and then I'm going to skip all the way up to the very front. And this facing needs to make sure it stays nice and flat, so I'm going to go ahead and put a pin on here right now just to hold that in place. And okay, this is where this is sewed, and the white part, the facing is peeking out. My velvet is kind of folded in, all right? This very edge here, I'm going to line up so it is with the edge of the front here, okay? So my velvet edges are matching. And carefully pin this in place, you know. Hopefully it'll stay where I want it to. All right, so with those two places, is it going to match up nicely? Well, no, it is not. It is not. You know what? I am going to go ahead and pin it up to where this facing piece is here, just so I have at least a couple inches that are secure, like that. And I'm going to do the same thing up here, and then I will worry about easing everything in to all the other parts. Now, out of curiosity, I am just going to leave this matched up at the center back and see just how short I am, because this feels like a whole lot to ease in. And look at that, I am inches too short. I don't know if the pattern piece is off, I don't know what's happening. But this will not fit. I cannot ease that much of this thickness into here and be able to do it on the outside easily. So at this point, I'm kind of out of luck because I had a few little scraps, you know, just a little bit, but I took my trash out and burned it, which I should not have done. And so at this point, I don't have any extra. So I am just going to have to turn the camera off and think for a minute what in the world I can do to make this waistband work, because I've got my sleeves cut out over there, and you know, they are massive sleeves. I guess there's a chance I could cut a few inches off of the sleeve piece and make that fit, but give me a minute to strategize. For the cuffs, I had enough of this stuff that I was going to do the inside facing and the outside cuff in this. What I did is I just took one of my facing pieces and I'm going to use that as my scrap for here, okay? Also, so for my cuffs now, they're just going to have the muslin on the inside like everything else, which is fine and dandy, okay? And on my waistband, if you remember, one side looked good, the other side had all kinds of issues. I am going to pick open this side with all the issues and sew this piece onto it, okay? And I'm not going to worry about trimming it to the correct length until after I know for sure that this is going to be on in the right position, okay? So I'm going to place it on there so that hopefully it will continue the same curve, because I'm going to need to add, you know, it was about that much short on each side, so about 4 inches is what I'm needing to add to this waistband. So with all of that, let me get my razor blade here and pop this seam open and get all of this, you know, taken care of so it's going to look nice when we're all done. And I'm just thinking at this point, I have no idea about getting the nap on there in the correct way or anything like that. At this point, I just want to get this thing so that it is all velvet on the outside and, you know, all muslin on the inside. Okay, I'm going to actually pull it back to this point because that's where it started to go all off here. And then I'm going to go over to my ironing board and press this open nice and flat over here so I can get a nice position with the other piece of velvet. Okay, that's taking a little more because I have understitching there. Okay, so let me go ahead and press this open. I think I lucked out because looking at it this way, if I'm going to sew it like this and open it, that looks like the same color fabric. So I think I actually have the nap going the right way, which is fabulous. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stitched on over here. I just did all of that with the other one, my extra piece. So let's see if it works with the one with the facing on it. Oh, that is wrong. Okay, what about that? That is right. Okay, so looking at it that way, that matches up. So I need to make sure that I sew it on this way, which may or may not be the same shape here, okay? But get this out of the way. What I'm going to do, though, is because my piece here is a little bit wider than this, I'm just going to kind of center it in here so that when I'm ready, I can come back and trim it to the right angle, okay? And I am not worrying too much about the very, very edge. I'm just going to pin it right here. You know what? I'm going to actually going to move it up just a hair so I have plenty of room at the bottom too. Because why cut myself short at this point? Oh my goodness, this is difficult to go through. Okay, so let me go ahead and sew this seam right here. All right, so I've got that stitched. I'm going to come in here with pinking shears because I'm going to have to press this seam allowance flat. And the pinks might disguise some of that bulk, okay? So I'm going to come back and press this open like this. Okay, so I have it pressed open. I need to make sure that this is the right angle here. I have no idea the right length right now. I just want to get the right angle. So I'm lining this up with the cut edge from before, okay? And I'm going to follow along the edge here to trim this excess off. If it will behave, that would be nice. Come on, Marie. Okay, that's pretty good there. Down here on the bottom, I'm not going to worry about that too much because actually I need to be able to stitch along there, and that looks pretty close to about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to leave that as is. Right here you can see where that stitching line is, and it's coming right here, okay? And so I'll just have to blend that in. So with that, I am going to do a trial run to see how this is going to fit on here. So if I cut my jacket over here, the side of this that still is intact, I'm going to go ahead and get my clips. Hang on a second. Okay, so I've got my clips, and I am just going to kind of come across here, laying this flat and popping clips on as I go. So now getting over here to the end, if I lay this nice and flat and I put this over it as if I'm just going to go ahead and stitch off the edge. All right, so I can feel where the edge of this needs to be. Actually, I am going to just draw a little line right there so I can see it clearly. Okay, so that's where that edge is. I need at least a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I'm going to draw another line over. From there, right here. That is my new cutting line. Please, please, please be correct. Okay. So what I'm going to need to do now is take all of this back off, and I need to get a piece of muslin to create an extra little piece back here so that that will all be, you know, correct. I need to cut a strip of muslin, and I should have plenty in this little scrap just to go here. So I'm going to get a piece that's at least as wide as this. What is that? 4 inches. I'm going to cut a piece that's about 5 inches wide, just so I have plenty of extra. And once again, I'm taking a piece that is much bigger than what I need, and I'm going to sew it on, trying to do this so it makes sense to the camera here, like this. Okay, so I'm just going to sew it straight across there, and then I will figure out how to trim my muslin piece after I have this put on. And I'm just going to pink the edge on this like I did the other. And so you may be yelling into your comments, well, wouldn't it be better if you split the difference and you added it to both sides equally so it would look perfect on the outside, you know, almost as intended? Absolutely it would, but do I have the patience and sanity at this point to do that? Absolutely not. So sometimes you just do the best you can do, and that is what we are doing here, okay? So now I have this piece. I can see where my former stitching line is, and I'm just going to pin all of this together very roughly so that it will behave in general. Okay, and come back, trim off this. And you know, I would think that, oh, it's just because of the velvet, you know, skewing it a little bit here and a little bit there, but 4 inches is a lot to just skew off center, so maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. We'll find out later. What I need to do now is continue this stitching line and come all the way. Oh, come on. This is very, very thick with all of that fusible stuff in it. Okay. I'm going to mark where that 1/2 inch seam line is over here, so I do not miss that. So I'm going to come over here, okay, like this, pivot here, go straight up, and then I do need to fold this down, okay? So there we go. So let me make that stitch, and I will be back. Okay, so back to where we were all that time ago. I'm going to finish the understitching on this additional area we just put on, and then try to go ahead and pin this to my bodice. Okay, so there we go, my new ends. And so I am folding my new ends in half, and I'm going to put a mark here where my center back is now, you know, which is off by a couple inches from the beginning. And just like before, and I can see my camera battery is about to go, I'm going to match up my new center back with my center back seam here and go ahead and get it pinned all the way across. I have every confidence it's going to fit, and sew this seam just the facing, leaving this open at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so it's on. I sewed it looking at the velvet side with the white on the bottom because it felt like if there was any easing that had to happen, it was going to be on this side, and I wanted the feed togs to be able to work on that, and I think it actually went on really well, you know, so I am good with that. Oh, these sides don't look good though. Oh, that did not match up exactly. You see that? I'm about 1/8 of an inch low. I might pick that open. What I'm going to have to do now is actually hand stitch the entire top part. So let me get it pinned on. Basically, I'm just going to turn the velvet side under so that when I pin it, I am pinning it right at my seam line that I just put in there. And I'm not sure how much difficulty I'm going to have getting this just pinned into place, but you know, just one little step at a time here. I want to make sure that my bottom, which I already understitched, already pressed, is, you know, the bottom edge, and pulling this up so that I can make sure that, you know, I'm getting the full amount there, which I don't think I did right there, so I need to go back and redo that pin. So give me a minute to get all of this pinned in place and I'll show you what it looks like. I can tell you that right here around the side seam, it is curved enough that I am having to come in here and make a few clips just so that it will, you know, flex enough that I can get this turned under. It is fitting as it should right now, and I think if I was using any other fabric, I would just top stitch this from the outside on the machine and call it good. But because it is this velvet and I have not top stitched anywhere else on this garment, I really don't want to start that right here. So I will once again be taking this downstairs with a hopefully matching spool of thread and a needle and try to work on this while I'm watching an episode of Hoarders or something, you know, that's my happy spot at this point. Okay, so I have the band put on and it's together enough that I pulled it over my shirt here and tried it on. And unfortunately, I don't really love it. I wish I loved it, but I don't. And one of the things is this is made so that, you know, it's going to match up like this in the front. And I can get it to match up like that, you know, as far as the sizing measurements on the envelope to my personal body. Yeah, I made that work, but the thing is that this front piece, it's just flat. There is no shaping on this front piece. And the armhole is relatively high, okay? And then understanding that once, you know, I get my seam line down here and I can, you know, not have it quite that high, it'll be closer to this. It's still pretty high. But because there's no shaping here, it feels really awkward on my body. My body feels like it wants a dart or something like that for shaping, you know? And unfortunately, because I had to use the inner piece as reinforcement so I could do all of this stitching, and because I can't even imagine trying to do this without fusing the two together, you know, I think that would be a nightmare. But because I did that, that made this really, really hard to hand stitch through. And my hands are honestly very sore right now. As far as the instructions, the place where we are right now is we finished this. They want us to do pockets. I am skipping pockets, and I am very glad I am skipping pockets, which is going to take us down here to sleeves, these massive, massive sleeves. And I'm actually going to take a break right now because I have some other stuff I need to take care of out in my shop. And when I come back, what I'm going to do is get my sleeves cut to the actual size of the pattern pieces. You know, they're fused, the velvet and the muslin are fused together, and serge around those pieces so that then I can come back, turn on the camera, and we can figure out how all of this pleating is going to work. Okay, I am back up here. So at this point, I have my sleeves serged all the way around, okay? And I am getting my pattern punched out. There are a lot of pleats on here, at the top and the bottom. And in the instructions, what they say is that they want you to clip your fabric up here for a mark, but I also want a point at the bottom. And so I'm just gonna mark it my way because I feel more comfortable that way. So using my hole punch. In addition to the circle in the middle, I am also punching out the position on the two lines that are going to be folded in for the box pleat. Okay, so like over here, in the center, and over here for each one of these pleats up at the top and also down at the bottom. Okay, so there really is no way around it. I do need to mark these pleats on the right side. So I'm just putting my pen through the holes. And I'm trying not to push the paper down so it won't want to, you know, get shifted out of sorts. So I folded one, and I'm going to keep my little paper here handy so I can see what's going on. Okay, so I've done this first one. This part here is where the optional braid is going to go. Okay, so now I'm going to grab these next two dots after that optional braid point and bring those two dots over to the next ones next to it. And I'm basically making box pleats, 1-inch box pleats. This is kind of finicky, not going to lie. It gives you the option if you want to stitch them down or leave them open. And I'm thinking of leaving them open at this point just because I don't know if I'm really up to machine stitching all of these or hand stitching all of them. But I think that I can go across the top and just lock them all in, you know? Anyway, let us carry on. These next two dots here, we are on these that are coming to the middle. Coming to the middle means that they are going to be matching up to this crease. Okay, so let me put another set of pins here. Actually, I'm going to put a clip at the top. I think that will make my life easier. A clip at the top and a pin at the bottom. Okay, that's better. And so now this is the optional braid zone here. So I'm doing nothing right here, and I'm going to these dots and bringing them over to match with the next ones. So my pleats are about 1/2 inch deep, okay? And or thereabouts. And I'm just working my way across. Sorry if that was not in the viewer. Okay, so now I have 2 box pleats done out of how many? Across the top and the bottom. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now I need to work on starting the next one, which is right here, which is going to come over and meet up with this gal. All right, so hopefully you are getting the picture. The main thing is, yes, you do have to mark the pleats on the right side of your fabric and keeping the paper here handy, so if you lose your place, you can see where you go, you know, that would be good. Okay, so what I did is I just stitched across the top, pulling out my little clips as I went, you know. Lightly, I have steamed this down here, and I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is with the machine come down about, not the full like 3.5 inch or whatever it is. I don't want to do that much, but I think maybe 1 inch on each one of these I'm going to do. I think that that's going to be enough to hold a very obvious box pleat, and but not so much that it's going to be way, way far down. And I'm thinking at this point that that's going to work for the bottom ones too at the cuff. So basically, I'm up at the top. I'm going to draw a line. That's what I'm going to do, is give myself a guideline so I'm pretty much uniform as I go across here. Now, if I make it at 1 inch, once I have the seam allowance in, only 1/2 inch is going to be exposed. So I'm actually going to put my ruler up here, add 1.5 inches from the top, and I'm just drawing lines straight across those box pleats, okay? So I'm going to come down over at that, over here at this line, back up, down, over, up, like that, all the way across this top. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the back side, and this is what it looks like on the front side. Did it make a huge difference? I don't know, but I do think it's going to be easier for me to sew it on with that upper part tacked down, you know? So I'm going to go with it. It is kind of a pain doing it like that. But what has been easy on this project? Seriously. So let me go ahead. I need to mark the bottom pleats exactly like I did the top. Fold them exactly like I did. Stitch them exactly like I did for both sleeves, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I went ahead and stitched the bottom ones slightly different. Like up here, I was outlining each big blank space. Down here, what I did is I came down one edge, over and up, so that my tabs are open. I like that better. You know, I'm not going to pull this out. I think it is what it is at this point, but I'm going to do the other ones like this. So that's what it looks like in the back, with my little down and over in the middle of the tabs in the back. But on the front, it's just outlining the folded edges, okay? So just thought I would mention that to you. These are fairly stout sleeves. I am really hoping that if I wash this, some of that fusible stuff might loosen up a little bit. I'm not really hopeful at this point, but it would be nice. So anyway, let me go ahead and get the other sleeve done. Good morning and welcome to the next day. So I had a sit down, come to Jesus meeting with myself this morning about what in the world I did, because look at this, so stiff, right? Turns out I really screwed up when I used that heat and bond stuff, and I did a bunch of searching this morning, and in general the internet says that if you wash it and you dry it and you tumble it and everything on medium heat, that it should soften up. So I'm going to give that a shot, okay? But look, see that? It feels like cardboard. I don't even know. So if I was to do this again, first of all, I don't need to do it on the sleeves. There was absolutely no reason, because if I was going to be doing embroidery up on these, well, there's so many layers that there would be plenty to back it up with, you know, so layering the muslin with the velvet on the sleeves was a big, you know, what in the world was I thinking? But on top of that, the heat and bond, I wasn't even thinking. So heat and bond is basically like a very thin sheet of plastic. And I was not aware, but now I am, that there are different levels. There's a very lightweight, there's a stretch version, and there's the ultra. And I believe I used the ultra, which is the strongest that there is, you know, so got that going for me, I guess. If I had to do something on the front pieces, I would use the Stitch Witchery webbing. And it's kind of like the stuff that the tape is, okay? But it's in big sheets, because this is just the glue. It doesn't have a big sheet of plastic in there. It's just the glue, and it doesn't add bulk when you fuse it. So, I mean, there's other things you can do. There's the Elmer's glue hack, you know. But, you know, just throwing it out there that this was a big mistake. Don't do this stuff on the sleeves. So, you know, live and learn. So with all of that being said, after I have this made, I am going to toss it into the washer and dryer before I actually wear it for you, because I want to see how it's going to come out. So at this point, we have two sleeves that have the gathers, or the pleats on the bottom, the pleats on the top. I need to go ahead and cut my other cuff facing from just my muslin, remember, because I used that extra one that I had already cut out of the velvet stuff. So yeah, and here's the deal. Look at this. You see this? This is how it's very, very dense. This is how the velvet is without anything. Very, very drapey, very, very dense. I think that it would have been fine just using this without this, but you know, live and learn. Live and learn. So let me get this cut out, and we will get the cuffs put on, because you actually put the cuffs on before you sew the sleeves together. So since I had that fiasco with the waistband, you know, I wanted to make sure my cuff is going to fit. So if I put it like this, it looks like it's exactly the right size, which is wrong because I need a seam allowance. But what you need to do is clip off this little serging tail and turn in the sides. I'm actually going to turn them in about, well, no, I'm going to do it twice. So basically I'm going to take up about 1/2 inch, but I'm turning it under about 1/4 inch, and then again about 1/4 inch. And if I do that, get these here, on each side, it should fit a lot better into the cuff. So let me get this turned in here. And if I lay my cuff down against it now, yeah, with the seam allowance, that's pretty much perfect, you know, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to need to do that to both sleeves. And you know what, since I did the machine stitching on this, I'm going to go ahead and do machine stitching on here. At this point, my hands are so sore from hand sewing through all of this stuff, you know, because it's like this, you know, that I'm ready just to let the machine do it. So what that means is for about 1.5 inches up on each side, basically as long as I have these stitches, I'm just going to do a little straight stitch on each edge there just to hold those securely. And then for the cuff pieces, just like for the waistband, I have a muslin only. Can you hear the rain? It's raining. It's raining outside. Okay, I'm going to have a muslin only piece and a velvet piece. Okay, and the velvet is going to be turned down about 1/2 inch on each side, and you're going to stitch it at 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, but anchoring down that fold. Okay? Okay, so once that is done, I am just trimming around the very edge of my cuff. And if you remember, at one point I was debating on if I was going to be embellishing the cuff or not, and I think that you can tell I have decided no, I am not embellishing the cuff, you know? I just don't need that kind of misery in my life right now. Okay, so let me trim this off. All right, so now with all that pinked, it should be a lot easier to turn this. I should understitch it. I really should, at least across the bottom. Let me see, this has a curved corner, not a really sharp corner. Oh my goodness. You know what, I'm just going to press it and see what it looks like and see if there's going to be an issue, because chances are I'm going to be rolling these up anyway. So let me give it a press, see what it looks like, and then we'll decide if I'm going to understitch it or not. Pressing it went pretty good. What I have decided though is that when I sew these on to my sleeve, instead of hand stitching like I did on the waistband, since I have, you know, other stitching now, I am just going to edge stitch with the machine across the top when I seal it, and then I'm just going to come around and top stitch, you know, all the rest of the way. Look at that, isn't that weird? Anyway, so no understitching on this just for right now, but let me go ahead and get this one clipped and turned and pressed, and then we'll put them onto the sleeve. I wanted to show you outside my window here. You can hear the creek is running very, very full. We had a lot of rain last night. But yeah, that's the view. That over there is my workshop where I restore the sewing machines. And that is a rooster crowing. Okay, back to work. Okay, so I just, you know, pinned the little cuff on here like I would if I was going to sew it, and held this up to my shoulder, up at the top, and this is way too long. So I think what I'm going to need to do is, since I have this tacked down already all the way across, and this is at about 1.5 inches, I'm going to cut 1 inch off here, but hopefully that's going to hold it securely enough that I can still just sew this on. That's my hope at this point. So I need to take a break for a minute, go out, do some chores, recharge my microphone battery, and when I get back, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I am back. Lots of flood issues outside. When I go out later to take the camera outside, I'll show you. It looks like all kinds of stuff got washed up. Before I actually shorten this, I wanted to look at the picture, and it looks like they're intending for these sleeves to pooch out. And I'm thinking that having it, you know, pooch out in its fullness is going to take up that extra length that it has. So I am actually going to leave them as is, just to see how it goes, because usually I can wear the actual length of patterns, my arms. The one part of my body that is a standard pattern size is the length of my arms, you know, because that's fun. So I'm going to sew these on. The muslin part, which is the facing for my sleeve, that is the part that is being sewn onto the inside of my sleeve cuff down here. So keeping this part out of the way, I'm going to sew straight across here at a 1/2 inch seam allowance for both of my sleeves. Okay, so I'm down here on Rosie. I just want to give you a quick look at how I get her started. So basically I need to open this up. I know that's dark. Sorry about that. I have lighting issues. You know, we endure. But I'm opening this up so that I can get my foot in here in that side area. And I want to line up exactly where my needle is going to start, right there. Okay, so I have my needle down in the place that I want. in my cuff, but my other fabric moved around, so I'm getting that situated. Okay, so now I'm going to go forward a couple, back it up, go forward a couple, just to get that locked in. All right, so now I'm just going to plow straight ahead. Now, Rosie is a beefy machine, and if you did what I did and you have like super thick layers and everything, you want to make sure that you're not using a very wimpy machine. You're going to need something with a little bit of you don't need as strong as this girl here, but you know, something beyond the bare minimum of a little plastic machine, if you know what I mean. Okay, so I've gotten to the end. I'm just going to back up, go again. So like I said, I am just going to top stitch this whole cuff from the outside. I don't even want to get into edge stitching this thing. Look, I ran out of bobbin. I ran out of bobbin. Look at that, and I wasn't even paying attention. I ran out of bobbin. Don't you hate that? Anyhow, let me get all of this situated here, get a new bobbin wound up, and I will be back. So while I'm putting in my new bobbin, I thought I would show you the bottom of Rosie in case you've never seen one. These do have, this is oil, that's sewing machine oil, and this is the little pump. And as you're turning it, it sucks oil up in and oils the whole system and then drips it back down when it's all done. So quite an efficient kind of system. We got little oil wicks and things. That was a project. This little tab here, that is what operates the lifter lever from down here. Okay, so when I push it with my leg, that thing pops up. They're fun. They're really ingenious kind of machines. Anyhow, let me get her situated down here again, and we will get started. Okay, so now with her bobbin in there, I'm just going to I'm opening this up and curling it forward so I can get in here. And that way I can see exactly where I want to line this up and where I need to stop. So I'm going to go one more stitch right there, lift my lever back up, do a couple to lock it in, and that is it. So now I should be able to flip this over right side like this. Okay, let me orient myself here so I can get it started. Basically, I'm going to go straight into top stitching this because this is all so stiff and I can't really pin it anyway. So I'm just going to stick my little foot over this thick part right there and just get started. I'm probably only going to do about an inch or so at a time, making sure that I have it stretched tight all the way across. Okay, here we go. Oops. Let me move it up a hair. Okay. It's hard to see where the edge of the fabric is because the velvet little hairs stick out, and see right there, I missed it. Okay, so I'm going to have to go back and sew that part. But over here, if you can see, it wanted to roll forward. I don't want that. So before I get too close to it, I'm going to tuck all of that underneath, and it might add just a little bit of a slight dimple right here, but that's okay, you know? That is better than having that white peeking out. So I'm going to use my little awl to hold it down. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go all the way around. And then when I come back, I'll just re-go over that spot right here that I missed, you know, because I am human. And yeah. Just kind of taking it as I can, trying to figure out where the edge of the fabric is. What I mean is that the hairs on this velvet stick out far, and I wanted to get my edge stitch close to the edge, but it's hard to see where that is sometimes. Okay, so I've got that done. Let me pull it off here, and we will see what she is looking like. Let me clip this thread over here. All right, so that is the stitching. You can see where I did it twice, you know, that is life and that's okay. On the inside, there's my stitching, you know. Not perfect, but doable. And at this point, with this project, I am searching for doable. Okay, so let me back the camera up a bit. So there is a dot right about here. And I erased my dot, but I remember it was right about there. Okay, so I am putting a pin here, and this should match up all the way to the top. So while I am here, I'm going to go ahead and sew this seam here at the usual for this pattern, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to press that seam allowance open. Okay, swinging back over to my, she is in my chair. Every single time I turn around, she gets onto my chair. She's sweet, but you know, she sheds. Alrighty, so back here at the table, I got my sleeves. If by some chance you have lost track of what is the front and what is the back like I have, the sleeves are cut slightly different. If you look on the pattern, one side has the little jaggedy points on it and the other side is smooth. Okay, the side that is smooth has 2 notches. That means it's the back. The side that is jaggedy has 1 notch. That is the front. So I'm just going to grab my pen here and mark it so I don't have to think about it anymore. This is my smooth side. I'm going to put a big letter B on this one and this one so I know that is the back. Okay, now one thing with this, I think I mentioned before, it seems like that underarm area is a little high. When I go to set these in, I'm going to actually lower that as I sew it and then trim to make it work. But I need to grab my jacket and bring it over here so we can get these pinned into place. Oh, I forgot, I was going to show you. When I press this seam allowance open, these areas here where I already stitched part of it to hold it, I just kind of let it unroll as it wanted to blend in up here. In the instructions, they're going to want you to stitch this all the way. I am not going to. I think that that's sufficient for me, but just letting you know, that's what they are telling you to do, is to stitch it all the way up. Okay? All right, so I am turning my sleeves right side out. My very, very stiff sleeves. Oh, what have I done? Okay. So with my bodice here, upside down, I know this is the back, I know this is the front, okay? If I put this sleeve on top of it, is this the back? Well, no. This is the back over here. See my letter B up there? I actually should have put it here. But this is the back of this side. This is the front. So that sleeve will not work. If I put this one here, yes, the back is over here, the front is up here, that matches this, so we're good. So I'm just going to set this underneath, match up this underarm seam here. I am going to use clips and just see if I just kind of lay it straight across as is, how it's going to match up. I do want to make sure that the center, let's see, 1, 2, this center, there are 5 box pleats. The center of the center one should line up with the shoulder seam here. Okay, so I'm going to match that up. Do you see how many layers I have going on there? Yeah, that's thick. That is thick. All right, so just pinning the pleated part on here. Let's see what it looks like in between, because if there's any easing to do, it's going to be in between here. And there is quite a bit of easing. So let me tell you, instead of trying to ease that sleeve in, I'm going to lower the place that I sew it, okay? So let me take these off, and using basically that top position up here as my guideline, I'm just going to start moving everything down. Let me see, do they ask you to gather? No, they are assuming that it's going to fit correctly. So, you know, down here, I'm going to lower the position where my sleeve is hitting up here. Okay, I'm going to lower that. That's about 1/2 inch. And I think that might be enough, because if I lower this by 1/2 inch and I'm stitching it, you know, right here, I think that that's going to be fine. So I'm going to see if this clip will hold it. I don't think so. Let me put this pin. Okay, so this pin is holding it there. So with that being in its new lower position, all right, I need to gradually lower this. Very stiff, very, very stiff sleeve. So I'm going to put a pin up here where this princess seam is and just kind of let that slowly taper down to where it's a little bit lower down there. I hope that makes sense. And this is the front part here, pretty much the same. Oh my goodness. Up here, I have it pinned where these pleats are, okay? If I turn it this way, you might be able to see. And then from that point, it's so stiff, it doesn't want to lay where I can show you. I'm just kind of stretching it out so that it will end up blending from this lower point to where it should be up here, okay? So when I stitch, I am going to be sewing this based on this length here. If that gives me a lot of trouble, I can always trim this, but I don't want to trim that until after I stitch, you know. Now when I'm sewing this, because I have a flatbed machine, I'm going to start it, if I can, with all of this trouble, right about here, okay? And I start it looking like this so that I can watch what I'm doing and then just turn it like that. All right, I'm not going to take the camera over there again. If you have a free arm machine, you can do it however you want to. That's just the way I'm going to do it. But I am going to end up with my sleeve set slightly lower in the armhole. I think that's going to take up the extra that I would normally have to ease in. Plus, I think it'll be a little more comfortable for me. I've just run one row of stitching. This is so stiff and so hard to work with, and I ended up with a couple tiny little puckers up there at the top. And you know what? At this point, I'm not going to worry about it. Between all of the busyness and everything and the sheen of the velvet and stuff, I don't think anyone's going to really go, oh, look at that, you know? So everything under the arm seems to be good. Is that another little pucker? See, on this side it looked okay, just a tiny thing, but I guess it is. What I'm going to do is, at the very bottom here, at the bottom curve area, like between this point and this point, I'm going to run one more row of stitching pretty close to this one, okay? And then I'm going to come back with my pinking shears and trim very close to my second row of stitching. Okay, so here's the deal. At this point, she's pretty much done except for closures. I still might put a closure down here. I don't know. I'm going to play with it. But before I put the closures on, I'm going to run this through the washer and dryer just to see if it will loosen up. Because at this point, when I move, I sound like I'm walking in cardboard, and that is not adorable, you know? So I'm going to go ahead and wash this, hope for the best for all of this stuff, you know? I think I have it sewed on securely. I'm just going to put this in with a towel, so hopefully nothing will snag it. And I will be back when that is done later on today, and we'll see what she looks like to decide how I'm going to tackle the closures. Okay, so I've got it out of the dryer, and I am so excited to say it softened it. It softened it a lot. So definitely wearable now. What I can tell you is some of the places where it was fused, not all the places, like here on this big sleeve, we have this little spot, which kind of looks like a surgical scar, you know? So that's odd, and I'm wondering if I can just pull it apart, if that will disappear. There we go. Ta-da! I think that next time I wash it, that will be gone. So just, you know, letting you know, there's some places that wanted to remain odd, but I think it's doable. I think it's fixable, and I'm very pleased. So with that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and put the hooks on. Now, I believe on the pattern, they wanted you to put them, you know, up to like about this point. I am only going to be putting 2 hooks down here at the front, and also on the cuffs I am going to be putting 2 hooks, okay? And you're supposed to put them so that the edges just barely butt up together. But basically I am going to alternate a hook, an eye, and a hook. So I'll do 3. I take it back. I'll do 3 here, okay? On the cuff, they actually also wanted you to do 3. So let me get my ruler, if I can figure out where I left it, and I'm going to mark this on the wrong side here. And they do have it on the pattern piece itself, but I'm just, you know, choosing to go rogue here. This cuff is 3 inches, or a little bit less from top to bottom. It's actually like 2 7/8. And I'm thinking if I do 1/2 inch down from the top seam and 1/2 inch up from the bottom seam, and then halfway in between those 2. So those 2 are 1 3/4, okay? So what is half of 1 3/4? I believe that is 7/8 of an inch, which is right here, okay? So on both of my fronts, I'm gonna do that spacing, 1/2 inch down, 7/8, 7/8, 1/2 inch. And probably this should be about the same. I think it is. I'll do something very similar on the cuffs. And I'm just gonna hand stitch these on only from the inside. And when you put them on, you don't want them to stick out, okay? So when I'm doing the hook, I want to place it so that the edge of the hook is just barely not noticeable on the inside, okay? And the same thing with the eye. When I'm placing the eye, I want it to be like this, so it is just barely not noticeable, okay? And that way when I hook them together, it'll come nice and straight. And the reason that you alternate, you know, one then the other, is because it'll be more secure where it won't want to pop open. So, because this is a bunch of hand sewing again, I am going to once again go downstairs to my comfy chair after I count and make sure I have enough hooks, and it looks like I do. Get all of these marked out, hand stitch them on. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, do I have volume? Yes, I do. So here we go. Let me see if I can put this where it won't get in the way. I like it. It was one of those love-hate things. This is not a quick and easy pattern at all. It's so different. My underarms, very comfortable. I'm glad I lowered those a little bit. So, you know, you learned along with me all the pros and cons of fusibles. It turned out okay. My takeaway from this is if you absolutely hate the way that your item feels after you've used to it, throw it in the washer and dryer, because that made all the difference in the world. It's very soft now. It's actually very, very comfortable. And these sleeves are so big, I can move everywhere, but because they're pleated, it doesn't feel bulky, even though it obviously is large. It doesn't feel bulky. And I think that's because the bodice is so small. So earlier I was complaining because there was not really any fitting in the front. And I think that part of my problem was because I was trying to try on just the bodice when it felt like cardboard. And I didn't have sleeves on it, so the armhole area was still very high. and it just felt very constricting, you know. But now I have, you know, my little hooks here and everything, and I think that it fits really well. And I love the little detail on the back. Isn't it cute? I can tell you that trying to do 3 hooks in alternating sides on your not dominant wrist, you know, here's my right hand trying to do it over here. It was so difficult. I don't know why, but you might want to have a partner help you with that. But am I going to do another one? I doubt it. But I had fun, and I think learning that I could do this kind of Soutache-ish type decoration fairly easily with just a needle and thread. And honestly, to me, having the stitching line to follow and then coming back and using a needle and thread to, you know, finish it off that way, that worked really good for me. So there you go. I hope it was worth waiting for. It's going to be a couple weeks before the next video because I'm going to be traveling out of town for family gatherings, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Living my bucolic life, throughout the city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.